Hey folks, I'm going to try something different this week, and what I'm going to try and do is give you a little bit of a synopsis of maybe some of the quiz questions from Chapter 4. Chapter 4 was dealing with the ideology part, and then Chapter 9, which was dealing with campaigns and elections. Wanted to go through a couple of the questions that you missed, most frequently anyway. And then the other thing I want to do with this is maybe give you some page numbers where you can find the answers. This has been something that's been requested. Now, I've got to be honest with you, this isn't necessarily something that's going to help you for the midterm or the final, but if you're struggling with the quizzes, maybe this will help you as far as finding the specific answers that I'm looking for on this. For Chapter 4, there were 3 or 4 questions that basically that y'all had struggled with. The first one was actually the idea of political equality, and this was actually under equality on page 93. This was the first indented paragraph, and it's the first sentence. It says here, American citizens also believe in political equality, the idea that every individual has a right to equal protection under the law and equal voting power. This, in fact, was the exact question that was from the quiz, and I believe 6 of you had missed this, so maybe about 20 or 25% of the class did. But again, it's the first indented paragraph, first sentence on page 93 under equality, pretty much straight word for word on there. 9 of you had missed the question, who in class is most likely to be the class dictator? This was actually Jeffrey that scored this way. And Jeffrey, no offense, it just is what it is. This is just kind of one of those informal quizzes, but typically the results do reflect reasonably well on these. Problem on this one was not from the actual chapter, but this one was one from the videos that I had shot and placed online, and I'm guessing for this one a number of you may not have watched the video. So please, the videos that I've shot up there, have a look at those. The other thing is, have a look at them again before the midterm, because while there might only be a question or 2 that comes from them, fact is that more for the short answers will probably come from them, so give them a good watch over before you take the midterm. The fourth one on here, populists. 7 of you had missed this. Which of the following groups is going to most likely regulate both economic and moral issues, or you might say bedroom and wallet issues? Again, this one came straight from the video. Populists were the group that were most likely to regulate economic and moral issues using the government to do this. Third question, this is actually question number 5 from one of the quizzes. When are you most likely to be most conservative in your life? Now, the choices on this one were things like when you graduate from college. Choices on this one were when you retire from your job. Choice on this one was when you have your second child. This actually came from the second video that I gave you dealing with the ideology chapter. And if you remember, at the beginning of your life, you're typically very, very liberal, which would take out when you graduate from college. At the end of your life, you're typically very, very liberal, and this would take out when you retire from your job. But when you have the most invested in the system, namely when you've got a mortgage, when you're raising kids, when you are actually at the job that you choose at this point, these would have all been characteristics of this. So yeah, the answer on this one was when you have your second child. And then the one that gave people the most problem of all was number, 13 of you missed this one. And this actually came from page 107. The question on this one was basically, which of the following would libertarians most likely support? And if you look on page 107, the first indented paragraph there under libertarianism at the bottom of the page says, libertarians oppose almost all government programs. They favor massive cuts in government spending and an end to the FBI, the CIA, the IRS, and most regulatory commissions. One of the choices for this one was reducing the power of the IRS. Technically, that is an answer that has a degree of correctness to it. But the chapter on here says, ends the IRS. So that's going to take that one out. And that's one of the answers that tripped y'all a little bit. Regulations making child pornography illegal. Last sentence in there, in that first indented paragraph under libertarianism on page 107 says, unlike conservatives, libertarians would repeal laws that regulate personal morality, including abortion, pornography, prostitution, and illicit drugs. One of the choices was making child pornography illegal. Well, no, they're not doing that. In fact, their regulations repealing laws regulating moral conduct or personal morality include pornography. So they would actually be in favor, as crazy as it sounds, of making this legal. The answer was legalize weed. And you note on there the very last 2 words, illicit drugs. They would be in favor of repealing laws that regulate personal morality, including illicit drugs, which means legalize weed was the answer on that one. For Chapter 9, y'all actually did really well on this quiz, and there's only a couple of them that I have marked here. One, and the one that really tripped up many of y'all on this one was actually 18 of you missed this. And this one was the one dealing with the results of midterm elections. Which of the following typically happens after midterm elections, or which of the following results would typically occur? A lot of you thought that indeed, if the president was popular, the president's party was going to pick up seats. If you look in here on page 245, and this is the third full indented paragraph there, and basically this is about 10 lines in, it says, in all of the midterm elections between 1934 and 1998, the party controlling the White House lost seats in the House. Basically, the gist on this is, regardless of the president's popularity, it doesn't matter if the president's popular or not, the president's party is typically going to lose seats in midterm elections. It goes on there to say that maybe there was a little bit of a departure from that in 2002, but having said this, the overwhelming majority of the time, the president's party always lose seats. And indeed, when you look at President Obama, how popular is he today? He's not as popular as when he first got elected, but I believe he still has more people that are technically in favor of him than are against him. What happened to the Democrats just a few months ago in 2010? They lost big time in the midterm elections. So again, even with Obama's at least moderate popularity, fact is the Democrats got killed, and that was one that got quite a few of you. The other one on here that really gave you some trouble, 5 of you had missed this. The 12th Amendment, and this one was basically just the 12th Amendment guarantees or provides or makes legal which of the following. This one was actually dealing with the election of the president and the vice president. On page 58, it actually lays out this idea of the 12th Amendment in the actual amendments to the Constitution. So if you do get these amendment questions, even if they're not specifically addressed in the chapters, please go back and have a look at the Constitution, because the 12th Amendment was mentioned in the elections chapter. And this, to be a little bit more specific on this, was at the very beginning of that chapter on page 243. One last one from this chapter that seemed to give y'all a fair amount of problems. The actual answer to this was on page 261. And this one was the question dealing with how much of a contribution could you give in a primary election. On page 261, and this is the first full indented paragraph, it says, the hard money limits in BCRA for 2007-2008 for individuals giving to candidates are $2,300 for each primary, general, or runoff election. Now this one could have been a little bit confusing, because technically speaking, you can give $2,300 for a primary election, you can give $2,300 for a general election, and you can give $2,300 for a runoff election, which means you could give up to $6,900. But I'm not asking how much you could give for the entire election cycle. I'm asking you how much you could give legally in the primary election cycle. And as it says there, the hard money limits for individuals giving to candidates are $2,300 for each primary election. Again, this is the first full indented paragraph on page 261. If you have any questions specifically regarding what you'd missed, don't hesitate to give me a call. We can certainly talk about these, or pop me an email. Otherwise, as you answer these chapter questions, and I've stressed this, but let me reiterate it one more time, be as specific as you can. Because oftentimes these chapter questions, and there's usually maybe 1 or 2 a chapter, but that's the difference between an A and a B, which I know some of you are getting a little bit upset about. Be specific on these. Oftentimes it's a very fine point that's the answer on these, and sometimes the ones that are the trickiest are the ones that you have to apply, really, like that legalized weed question, or maybe the midterm election question from Chapter 9. Again, if you've got questions, give me a holler. Otherwise, I wish you the best of luck on this week's assignments.